Hello everybody and welcome back to another DCS series, AH-64 Apache tips from a noob, and today we're going to talk about controls, so stick around guys. Okay, so one of the things that I am getting pounded with in comments is, what are your controls? How do you set up your controls? And the fact of the matter, guys, is two things. Number one, I'm still using RS Mapper. And the second thing is I am constantly moving things around still. However, I completely understand where you guys are at. It's been hours and hours of adjusting these controls. I've been spending so much time bouncing back and forth and moving this and moving that, and then just trying to figure out what some of them do so I know where to put them. I'm going to do my best to put as much of that to away as I can for you guys today. However, please understand the disclaimer and patience here. Understand that I am still learning this aircraft just like you are. Some of the things I may say may be incorrect. I'm going based on my experience with the aircraft and what my interpretation of how something function is, and that's sort of where I'm at. Okay, I am trying to squeeze as much playtime into this aircraft as I can in my free time, and then share those experiences with you guys after I've said, ooh, I've learned a few things. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to use just the DCS World controls. I'm not going to use RS Mapper, but I'm going to show you guys how I do everything if I were to map everything in DCS World, which is what we're going to do today. Plus, I want to see if I like that or not, because honestly, you know, having a dependent on third-party softwares can sometimes be a pain in the butt. But I digress. So let's get into going ahead and setting up the controls. Now we're going to do the George AI, then we're going to do the pilot seat, then we're going to do the CPG. Okay, and I'm going to try to go through this very quickly because that's a lot of information to go through. So please forgive me if I talk fast. I'm going to do my best to keep that under control. Now, with that being said here, I do also want you guys to understand that I use the Thrustmaster Warthog as my HOTAS. I highly recommend you bring up an image of them, something that identifies the different items that are on it. I'm going to do my best to also describe where these buttons are so you guys can understand what they do. Much like Matt Wagner did in his video. I did appreciate that he did. I think that was a really neat way to do it. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, as I said, we're going to start with the George AI. This is a definite requirement. You must have it. What I'm going to be using is I'm going to be using the sensor select switch that is found on the flight stick of the Thrustmaster, and that is going to be the little gray hat. That is where your thumb would rest on the left side of the stick. It has a 4-position hat switch with a depression button on it. So, George AI Helper interface. Let's do, there we go, the hide switch. That's going to be the button depress. So I'm actually going to push the button down, and then I'm just going to do the corresponding buttons here. So forward for up, back for down, and then left and right. So again, sensor select right, sensor select left. Oops, didn't mean to hit that. And my sensor select down. Cool. All right, that covers George for a minute. Let's go into the CPG or the pilot seat. Now we're going to start with a few things here. So the AS button, okay, this is the arm safe switch, which is hidden at the moment. But basically think of it as your master arm if you haven't quite caught on to what that is yet. Okay, so what I'm going to use is I'm going to use the autopilot disengage button that's actually found on the throttle. Okay, because I don't need an autopilot for this one, not in the sense that it's designed for here. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to actually change our controls here, and I'm going to find just the, I thought the cyclic was, nope, collective, learn the alphabet. Okay, and let's come over here to where we can see the stick and throttle, and let's start working through this. Bore sight polarity switch. Now, I'm not sure what the bore sight does just yet, and if one of you guys want to shed some light on it, I would actually really appreciate that. I haven't had to use it yet, I can tell you that much, but we're going to go ahead and put this, I'm going to use the top spoiler switch or the speed brake switch forward. Okay, it is a static button, and I'm going to set it as that. And then on the polarity, this is how you switch from white hot to black hot on your TADS display. I'm going to use that as the spoiler aft switch. It is a momentary switch that goes to the back. All right, moving on down here. Cursor enter depress. This is a big one. Now, what I'm going to be using here is the Where your middle finger would rest on the right-hand throttle is a little mouse that comes with it's the TDC, Target Designator Cube for the A10, but it's a little mouse, and it's also got a push button, and that's what I'm going to use for that, is the push button. All right, FCR. The FCR is Fire Control Radar. It's not available yet. NVS display, PNVS, or TADS. I have not set that up yet, so I'm not going to comment on that one just yet. Searchlight, we don't need. Sight selector, we do. And for this, I'm going to use where your index finger would be on the right-hand throttle, the point of view hat. So Fire Control Radar is going to be to the left. HMD will be up. Link is down. TADS is to the right. Stabilator. Your two stabilators in the back, if we come out of here, those are the stabilators right there on the bottom. Okay, this is a stabilator trim. Okay, now luckily I actually found one of Cosmo's older videos where he mentioned that they're not really used, and I have yet to find a reason for it myself, so I wouldn't sweat that too much. The tail wheel, now you can either just bind that to a keyboard command. I don't think it has one by default. I put that there. You know, you're only going to be using it when you're on the ground, but you will be using it while you're taxiing. So it's really up to you on whether what kind of importance you want to put on that. For right now, I'm going to go ahead and set that to the pinky button, a little gray button down on the bottom of the flight stick. Just a single depress button. Nothing fancy about it. Okay, and that should cover our collective. Let's move to the cyclic. On the cyclic, okay, chaff dispense. I'm going to use my China hat on the right throttle. It's a little red hat or red switch down at the very bottom of it. Goes forward and aft. So for chaff, I'm going to use aft, and there's a flare dispense. I'm going to use forward. Force trim, we're definitely going to want that. For this, I'm going to use the trim hat that is found on the top right of the flight stick. Altitude hold, though not available, I'm going to set to right. Attitude hold does work, left. Down, I believe, is disable or disengage. And then force trim mode up, I use this all the time. Anytime you guys see in my videos where I'm trimming, this is what I'm using. All right, I'm not going to worry about the mic switches just yet. We got bigger fish to fry. Symbology select switch. This is another big one. We're going to be using the TMS switch, or target management switch. Little black hat, four-way hat, right underneath the weapons release button on the flight stick. Down for down, up for up. Now, the symbology select depress. If you have a third button that you want to map to that, you can. It's not necessary. What it does is changes this screen here to bring up all the flight information, your flight path indicator, your pitch scale, bank indicator, all that good stuff, altitude, speed. It's going to put it down here on the PFD when you're in flight mode. Okay, and then your WAS switch, or weapons action switch. Okay, air to air is down, which is not available yet. Gun up. Missile right, that's the Hellfire. And obviously rockets for left. Trigger guard, it's totally up to you guys how you guys want to do this. I set just a keyboard command for T. Where are you? Trigger guard, there it is. T here. I don't even know why I bothered setting the close. I never close it. But the first thing that I've gotten in the habit of doing when I step into the cockpit is I will strike this key and lift that trigger guard up. The trigger guard, according to Cosmo, I've mentioned this before, they're actually trying to get ED to remove it, because what it is in reality is a spring-loaded cover that you sort of just stick your finger up underneath, do your work, you know, release your ordnance, and then bring your finger back out. So they're actually trying to remove this, but like Cosmo said, and it's a very fair statement, is that it's probably pretty low on ED's priority scale right now. So, you know, that's something that'll come later down the road. It's just important to remember that if you are in the pilot seat, you need to hit T. If you jump then to the CPG, you need to hit T again, or whatever keyboard command you put here. But you need to open that trigger guard for the corresponding seat. Okay, and then the trigger. Okay, now on the flight stick for the Thrustmaster Warthog, much like many other sticks and throttles out there, it has a two-stage trigger. You squeeze it halfway, you hear a click, and then the rest of the way depresses a second button. So here is the first click, button 1. And then the same trigger fully depressed. You're going to see it go to 1 and then 2, or 6 in this case is button 6. Which, does that make sense to you? Because it really doesn't make sense to me. Okay. And that is it for all of that. That's pretty simple. Now, a couple others that are, I think actually just one other one that really catches my attention. I think we got everything else. Is we're going to want eye. This is the eye heads display. I'm going to set this to my paddle switch. This is the large paddle at the bottom of the flight stick. And I'm just taking a quick peruse through here, but I don't think there's anything else that I'm crazy. Well, master caution. Actually, I'm not so much worried about master caution as the master warning. The master warning button can go off pretty frequently and get kind of annoying to reach up and click it. That's that yellow one that always illuminates here. That's the master warning. The master caution is the blue light down below. Master caution, you should probably address whatever that issue is before you silence it. But the master warning, you're going to find very often that you are telling it to stop it. Okay, and I think that is it for the pilot. If there's anything else, we'll come back to it, but I'm pretty sure that's it. Like I said, I'm hoping I get everything, guys. I really am trying here. I don't want to miss anything for you guys. I know this is probably one of the most frustrating parts about any aircraft is getting the darn buttons the way you need them to. I think that's everything that you must have from the pilot seat to be effective in the air. So let's move on to axis for a second. Let's talk about those. Collective is my right throttle on the Thrustmaster. Power levers both is the left throttle on my Thrustmaster. Rudder control is my TPR rudder pedals on the bottom. Axis tune, there's curvature. Okay, if you guys are interested in that. Brakes, same thing. The pedals down on the rudder pedals, but make sure you invert if you have TPRs or something similar. Slider, this is the zoom camera. This is the gray slider on the far right of the Thrustmaster throttle. And then obviously cyclic pitch. Many of you asked about curvature. There it is. So pitch and roll. All right. And finally, there is one other that I was missing, and that is, there it is. The HOCAS, the little cursor that can bounce from screen to screen here, is the little mouse where your middle finger would be on the right-hand throttle. There's the curvature, and on the vertical axis, inverted. That should cover everything from the pilot side. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the CPG. So moving over to the CPG, let's start right away with talking about collective and cyclic. Don't map them. Just don't, okay? If you want to fly, hop to the back seat. The one thing I will give you a tip on right away, if you are moving from the front to the back, okay? So on your keyboard, number 1 will put you in the pilot seat. Number 2 will put you up in the CPG. If you want to go back to the pilot seat, make sure you have plenty of altitude because it is going to take a second, and be ready for that aircraft to go nuts for a second. I will give you guys a little tip. When you swap to the back seat from the front, immediately be ready to pitch nose forward and get that forward momentum. It's not so bad if he's already moving forward. So that's the other option too. Make sure that he's already got some good forward momentum. You know, you're doing 80, 90 knots. And then when you make the swap, you should be able to correct rather quickly and maintain correction or control the aircraft. But if you're going from a hover, it's scary. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right, so like I said, collective and cyclic, don't map them. That's what you have the pilot seat for. And many of us don't have 400 different sticks, you know, and throttles in our cockpits here. So let's move on to the left hand grip. That's going to be critical. And I do recommend you guys keep this as close as you can to what you did on the pilot side. So left hand grip, let's start looking down through here for a minute. Okay, the TADS view. This is going to be your zooms. Much like the TGP, the targeting pods that we saw like in the A10, the F-18, etc. You know, you have that zoom where you can real smoothly zoom in and out. The TADS doesn't have that. It has 4 different stages of visibility. You have a medium zoom, a narrow field of view, a wide field of view, and then I want to read your license plate kind of zoom. Okay, so let's move over. I'm going to use the flight stick for this. And let's see here. For medium, I'm going to go the trim hat, the gray hat on the top right of the flight stick, right. For narrow, I'm going to go left. Wide, I'm actually going to go aft or down. And the zoom forward for zooming in, right? So the up hat. The FLIR TV, or I should say camera mode, is going to be FLIR or TV mode at the moment. I'm going to use the boat switch. It's on the right-hand throttle for the Thrustmaster. It's a 3-position switch, technically, but what it is, as far as DCS recognizes it, is forward and aft. So we're going to go forward for FLIR, aft on the boat switch for TV. Okay, and just like we had to do with the pilot seat, we have our WAS information. So remember, air-to-air is, what was it, down? The gun is up. Missiles is right. So this is the same switch. This is the black castle switch, the 4-way hat switch, right underneath that gray trim hat we were just using. And left for rocket. And then trigger. Now, it's possible we're going to be back here again, and forgive me if I do. I'm going to try to get it right. I believe the left-hand grip actually fires the gun. So we're going to do the actual trigger on the flight stick, detent 1, or fires the weapon, not just the gun, sorry. And detent 2. Now the difference between the two detents is detent 1, my understanding, will release the weapon if all parameters are met. Second detent will release the weapon regardless. Okay, so let's hope we have that right. We might have to come back here and change that because I might have these reversed with the laser, but we'll find that out in a minute. Okay, so we have that. Now let's move to the right hand grip. The hand grips, if you aren't catching the theme, they're the critical part. All right, FCR, that's going to be fire control radar. It's not available yet. FLIR polarity. I don't think we need that there. Hang on a second. We might come back to that. All right, so right hand. You know what? I can tell you right now what that was. Hang on. Yes, okay, I have it right. Okay, so these are our lasers. Now you have detent 1 and detent 2. Detent 1 is going to pulse the laser. Okay, and what pulsing the laser does, even if you hold it down, it's just going to send one quick flash of the laser out. And what it does is gives you ranging information. Okay, and we'll see that in the next video when we talk about using the Hellfire from the CPGC. It's so much fun. All right, so first detent, we're going to use China Hat aft. The China Hat is a little red switch at the very bottom of the right throttle. It's a 2-way switch. And then the second detent will actually put the laser into a steady mode. It locks the laser on for as long as you hold it down for. Okay, and that's what we're going to want to actually use to fire our weapon. Okay, and then we have our sensor or sight select switch, which I'm going to be using the point of view hat, which is your index finger on the right throttle on the HOTAS. So for the fire control radar, I'm going to set that to left. HMD is going to be up. The link, which is also not available yet, I don't think, is down. And the TADS is going to be to the right. Okay, and then the sight slave button, I'm going to be using the little red button that's on the left throttle of the Thrustmaster Warthog. And I think that is everything. Maybe we do need the polarity. I thought it was in a different location, so we're going to hold off on that for just a second. Let's go do some searching real quick, because I thought... All right, so we're going to want this. And again, just like we did on the pilot seat, I'm going to keep as many of the controls the same as I can. So I'm going to do the spoiler switch forward, or speed brake switch forward, not spoilers. Not flying an airliner today. And then we're going to be looking at polarity. Is that what it was? And that's the one I wanted. Bore sight polarity switch. And I'm using that same speed brake switch aft. And then we also want the I key to be able to turn our IHADs on and off. And just like we did before, I'm going to be using the paddle switch on the flight stick. And I think I've covered everything. If there's anything I'm missing, it might be one or two things, but I think I've got everything that's required in order for you to have a good time out there. Now, let's talk about axis for the CPG. Axis for the CPG are pretty critical. So, for the flight stick, the same way you would fly your airplane around, we're going to be using the right controller track of the hand grip. So, it's the right hand grip, axis tune. There's the tune and curvature. And, oops, wrong. Axis tune, inverted on the vertical axis. That way the camera moves up and down the same way your aircraft would. Now what this does is this is how you're going to move your TADS camera around. You're going to use your flight stick. And you know what? I got to tell you, I thought it was weird at first, but you actually have a heck of a lot more control than you do with any of like the TDCs. And then the HOCAS cursor, just like on the pilot side, we're keeping that the same. This is the little mouse that I have on my right throttle. That was be where your middle finger rests. Same thing that has that push button that we were talking about earlier, and which actually I can't remember if we got that or not. And then wheel brakes, again, rudder, you can, actually we can honestly just clear these and clear that category. I don't need the rudder pedals. But if you needed the rudder pedals for a different axis, you could. So get creative, guys. You can still use your rudder pedals. It just might be a little funky. Actually, I can think of a couple of different ways to use it. Anyway, we'll do a video on that later on if I decide to do it. So let's go to cursor. Too many R's. It's not that one. It's that one. All right, so we need to set that as well. Cursor enter, and again, that is the mouse on your middle finger, right hand throttle, depress. We're going to push it in. We need to make sure we have that. All right. And if I have everything that is actually required for the moment, I believe that is it for the AH-64D Apache tips from a noob controllers setup. I hope that has helped you guys a lot. I hope at the very least has given you some explanation of what some of this stuff does. Hopefully cleared up some of the gray areas that made you go, should this go here? Should this go there? Watch the next video, which I'm sure most of you will, which will be the tips from a noob, the Hellfire missile from the CPG seat. On the next video, we're going to be using the George AI to control the aircraft while launching Hellfire missiles like crazy from the CPGC. It is so much fun. Stay tuned, guys, because that one will be following very shortly behind this one.